This episode of the Flush Podcast is brought to you by Federal Premium Ammunition, Benelli Shotguns, and Carlson's Choke Tubes, a 1-2-3 punch that we bring with us every day in the field. Today, we're going to ride across South Dakota's open prairie on horseback, watching setters hunt for sharp-tailed grouse on the rolling hills. Sound like a perfect day of hunting? Yep, it's the view Jeff Gillaspie has worked so hard to make a reality. Welcome to another episode of the Flush Podcast. I'm Travis Frank. I'm your host. Brandon Morton is our producer. He's done an amazing job at getting this podcast on the air each week in spite of all of the challenges that we've faced during this COVID pandemic. Brandon, I appreciate you. Thank you very, very much. And it's an exciting week for us because a brand new season of the Flush finally starts airing once again on the Outdoor Channel. So from now until the end of December, you'll be able to watch our entire season of shows each week on the Outdoor Channel. There are 4 airings each week: Monday at 10:30 a.m., Tuesday at 6:30 a.m., Friday at 5:30 p.m., and Saturday morning at 8:30 a.m. All of those times are Eastern times, just a note there. So set your DVR if you're not going to be able to sit on the couch and watch. But we hope that you enjoy the season. We do our best every year to find great adventures, hunt a lot of public lands, hunt with interesting people, and showcase very unique bird hunting opportunities. And that brings us to our first guest today. Jeff Gillaspie operates Tinker Kennels, which is basically the home base of our very first episode of the season that's airing this week. It's possible you've already watched our television show before listening to this podcast, or if it's the other way around, we hope you enjoy the television show and thank you for listening to the podcast. But either way, Jeff, welcome to the podcast today. Thanks for taking the time.
Well, thanks for having me. It's good to talk to you guys again. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely, absolutely. What does a normal day look like for you, Jeff?
Well, off season or on season?
Let's say right now, off season, before we get into the season.
Off season right now, the dogs, the horses are lazy. The cats are busy chasing rodents and small birds around the place. But for us, for Teresa and I both, we both work other jobs, and then we take care of our place out here, making sure the horses and the dogs are fed and cooled and washed and the flies are off of them and so on and so forth. We've been crazy busy trying to get our kennels set up and built so we have everybody in one place. So,
are you remodeling?
We're actually doing a complete new build. So all of the dogs are going to be in one kennel. So, needless to say, we won't be doing a podcast from the inside of that kennel because it might get a little loud. So.
Well, how many dogs and how many horses?
Right now we're at 18 dogs, and out of those 18 dogs, 16 of them are setters, and then we have 2 English pointers as well that like to join the party. So, and then we have 8 horses right now.
Jeepers! And you work a second job on top of this. What's your other job?
I actually own a semi truck, and I contract deliveries for Menards. So.
Do you ever feel like there's some days where you just regret that you're doing both of these and it'd be a lot easier to just drive that semi truck?
And Teresa and I we talk about it quite a bit, but we always talk about being able to do just Tinker Kennels full time. So it's never the other way around.
Yeah. It's a pretty special operation. Where are you located?
We're right in central South Dakota, in Pierre, South Dakota.
Gotcha. So when somebody says, "What is Tinker Kennels?" What do you do? What do you tell them?
First, I laugh, and because I try to think of what we actually do. But I start out by telling people that we do guided horseback hunts for upland birds, and then I say we're also a breeder of the fine English setters. So, and then they kind of cocked their head at me, and
And then you also offer summertime rides, right?
we do, yeah, yeah. This year's kind of been goofy, of course, with everything that's going on. But between building of the kennels and this whole pandemic thing, we haven't done any trail rides this year, but we do. They're not really trail rides; they're horseback rides out on the prairie. But we do offer that in the summertime, and it's a good thing because that helps keep the horses in shape, and they get out and eat some of that long grass as it's before it turns brown. So.
Right, right. Well, yeah. So just the amount of work that I've witnessed you do with, it's way beyond just taking care of your dogs. And the reality is you've got 18 of them. So,
Right.
um, what does a normal day of hunting look like for you? What time do you start?
Usually, well, I, I set my alarm for 4 o'clock, and that gets me up and going. And then once I'm ready and had a couple shots of coffee, I'll head outside. The first thing I do is catch up the horses, get them cleaned up and brushed up, tacked up, saddled up, and then I'll get them a little bit of grain while we're collecting dogs, making sure all the dogs are in good shape, making sure we have the supplies for the day. The water tanks are full, the fuel tanks are full, and the medical supplies if we have to work on a dog or something like that. So everybody's tacked up, loaded in the trailer, and then I'll start loading dogs. And we typically will take 8 dogs. I have 9 kennels in the horse trailer for the dogs, but we usually take 8 dogs with us and then once everybody's loaded up, then we just head to town and we'll either meet our hunters at where they're staying, or they'll drive out, and follow us out to the hunting grounds. So
Hmm. Where do you like to hunt?
we are we love the open prairie.
Hmm.
So we have West River ground that we lease, and then we also have ground that's East River, and it's all the open prairie. So.
Most of it is, I would say, from the times that I've spent riding with you, most of it's hill country. I mean,
Mhm.
you're not talking pheasant country so much. I mean, where the sharp-tailed grouse are, it's grass. It's that short grass prairie out there. I mean, there are spots that
Right.
we've hunted where you can see the Missouri River.
Hmm.
Um, I, how would you describe just the experience to somebody?
That's really a tough description, but the best way that I could possibly think of it is, especially when you're sitting on a horse, it really looks like an ocean of grass because it's very close to never ending. It's as far as you can see, and
Hmm.
when the wind's whipping across the prairie, and it looks like waves. So
Yeah.
that's the best description I could possibly come up with.
So take me back a little bit in time here. How long have you been operating Tinker Kennels?
It's recent I officially bought the operation. I believe it was 2016, maybe 2015, one of those 2 years. So we've been official owners for 4 years or so. Before that, Teresa actually started working for Bob Tinker, who owned the operation, and she took care of his horses and his dogs. And then eventually, I was working full time for UPS, but eventually I started going along with Bob on his hunts, and that led into me actually taking his hunters out. If his back was bad, or his knees weren't working right, or any number of things, and so we got to a point where we purchased horses and dogs of our own, and they were being used at that operation. And then finally one day Bob said to me, "Hey, I'm done. If you want in, now's the time." So that's what we did.
Is that something that you always wanted to do, or you just saw the opportunity and said, I'll give it a shot?
We were pretty clueless about the whole thing up until we started working with Bob. We had, I've always hunted grouse, sharp-tail and prairie chickens, but never from the back of a horse. And once I did that, it's not the same to do it any other way. I fell in love with it, and I thought, I didn't really look at it and say, oh, this is a good business venture for me because it's a niche or any of that. I'm so passionate about these English setters and the way that you get to watch them work when you're sitting on the back of a horse. And I'm just very fortunate that it's something that I'm not just throwing money at, because it does. The horses earn their money and the dogs earn their money, and that's the way it should be.
Well, it's one of the most unique bird hunting experiences in America. It truly is. I mean, there are countless places that hunters can go and
Mhm.
watch a dog run through the grass. A lot of flat fields. You can hunt mountains. You can hunt grouse in the timber. I mean, there are so many different places to go, but
Mm-hmm.
few places where you can go out on the open prairie and feel like it's the Wild West in some ways because you're
Right.
sitting on a horse and your horses are Tennessee Walkers, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they are just the most calm, cool horses that I've ever ridden on. But you just go and sometimes, and we'll get into this in a little bit about who I hunted with there, but there were so many birds that we ran into that the dogs were constantly on point. And we kept thinking, I kind of just wish the dogs would have to look a little harder because
It's
I
just,
want to ride a little bit. I want to
that's
watch
right.
them. Yeah, I mean
And
it's
it's just, yeah, it's strange. It just depends on the year. And last year was crazy. You guys were really on the ground probably just as much as you were sitting on a horse, and the bird
more.
numbers were great. And yeah, and this year's looking that way too. There's carryover from last year, and there wasn't anything crazy in the weather this spring, so the hatch was good. And I'm excited for this year as well. But it really is I'm not really one to brag or push the whole, we killed 100 birds, that kind of stuff. It's more for me. It's about that experience, and that's what I want people to have is the experience.
Well, it's very unique, and so um, on this particular hunt that we did with you last year that just is airing this week. You and I had been talking for a few years, and we had hunted together once before, but
Mm-hmm.
we were talking about how um, the opportunity that you provide is just ideal for if you want to introduce your wife or if you want to introduce a first time hunter to
Mm-hmm.
the field because there's so much to take in. And in some ways I look back at it now and it's kind of almost overwhelming, but I brought my wife out and she got to experience her first time hunting. um, it was something that we had talked about for a while, and she's gone with me on hunts before, but she had never carried a gun or
Okay.
had that desire to be the hunter. And
Right.
on this particular time, or a couple of years ago, she said, I would like to go bird hunting with you. And of course, I just got really, really excited because I wanted her to join me and see what it's all about. But then when you and I were talking, we're like, there just may not be a better way to introduce, at least my wife, and I'm assuming a lot of other men, if they're listening,
Sure.
um, their wives as well. And you say, you experience a lot of hunts with couples or even
Mm-hmm.
just rides on the prairie. There's something about that, just that time spent together out there. Um, do you enjoy when you get to see couples come out and hunt?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's like a 3 day date for the couples, and you can see, because it's a coordinated effort when you're out there in the field, and you kind of, when you're on that date, you kind of forget about everything else, and you get to enjoy that time with each other, without everything else bombarding you, you know. And it's the same for Teresa and I when we have the opportunity to get out, when we're out training dogs, you know, we're each on a horse and we're swapping dogs out and running dogs and working dogs and so on. And it's just everything else melts away and it's just that experience. And I think it's easier when you're sitting on a horse that holds your focus and you can start watching the dogs and experiencing where you are in that moment instead of thinking about what's going on tomorrow or what happened yesterday, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, it's really therapeutic in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
Um, if there was no gun involved in the whole scenario, I think it would still be one of those experiences where I would just say, "God dang it, I'll always remember that." But Jeff, it was special for me because I got to look over, see my best friend riding on a horseback, and she had a gun, and she, was watching the dogs, and just she would she wanted to succeed. Once we started, it was a process for us because
Right.
we spent time back home and shooting clays and just really spending a lot of time getting comfortable, and we showed that, parts of that, but not all
Sure.
of it. I mean, there's so
Yeah.
much that goes into somebody getting comfortable hunting and that part of it. But for me, as her husband, just to be able to see her kind of grasp some of that, and then all of a sudden she's hitting the targets, and just the
Mhm.
excitement, you can see it in her eyes. And even when, the first couple of birds, when we finally got out there and we were hunting, and the first couple of birds are, the dog's on point, what's going to happen here? And then all of a
Right.
sudden, the explosions of birds, and they catch her off guard. But just that reaction, it's I don't really know that I have the right words to fully sum it up. I'll just say that.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really from my perspective, it was really neat to see that transition, you know, complete preparation. And I mean, she was ready to go, you know, safety, everything was down pat. But then you take her out and put her in a completely different environment, and you could just see it. You could see that transition, and once it clicked, that was it. And boy, it was very satisfying for me to see that and that smile on your guys' face. I'll never
Yeah.
forget that.
We had more than one hug out there in
Yeah,
the grass, that's
yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
But
It was
yeah, we
just yeah.
still we still talk about it, and
Yeah.
I've encouraged a lot of my friends to just try to do something like that with their
Hmm.
wives. And some people say, "Wow, I hunt so I can get away from it." Well, you know what? Maybe you wouldn't want to get away from something if you enjoyed it together. And
Yes.
for you and Teresa, the cool part was Teresa, she was riding right alongside of us. How often does she spend time in the field with you?
Well, unfortunately, you know, with her job, I've got it easy. I work, but my when hunting season rolls around, that's it for me. That's, you know, technically my job. I don't know if I'd ever call it work, but it is my job, and so she doesn't get to come along on hunts as often as she would like to, but we try to arrange our schedule so that when we're training dogs in August, that she can come along every weekend that we do that. So.
Well, for somebody that says, "All right, I'm kind of interested in this," what does a normal day look like for them? How do you walk me through it? I've lived it, but different to hear you
Sure.
talk about it.
Yeah. Well, you know, my goal is to take away all of the, aside from actually hitting a bird, you know, the work wise, I try to take care of that. You know, um, I'll take people in the field. They ride out with me. I'll make sure the horses are cinched up tight and make sure the stirrups are right. You know, show them how to steer the horse if they need to, which these guys you likely won't have to, but you know, so every little aspect there is hopping on a horse and watching the dogs, working the dogs, and just enjoying the experience. And then when we take our breaks, I try to make sure that there's coffee or cold beverages, you know, and snacks. And lunch break, I'll cook lunch and set out the chairs, you know, and table, and just try to make everything so that it's not work. It's just so that everyone can focus on that experience of sitting on a horse, watching those dogs work. And a lot of times when people come out, they'll bring their own dogs. If they have big running dogs or even not big running dogs, they'll bring their own dogs, and then for them to be able to watch their dogs out running with my dogs finding birds and whatnot, that's a whole nother experience because they're doing it from the back of a horse.
Hmm.
And I hear that a lot is people saying, it's a whole different world on top of this horse. I can see so much better, and I can, when my dog goes on point, we can get up there. I don't have to just run across the field hoping I don't step in a badger hole or something. There's just
Hmm. What do you say to somebody that might be intimidated by maybe they don't know how to ride a horse or they just don't have the experience?
that's with these horses of mine. I've never had any issues with these horses. I would never put somebody on a horse that wasn't a true professional. These aren't the these aren't the rodeo horses, and they're not cattle horses. They know their job very well. Sometimes I think that they know where the birds are just as much as the dogs do, but they know that they are taking care of their rider above everything else. So um, there's nothing to be nervous about riding a horse. There's no experience required on these horses that we bring out in the field. And if there is horses that are typically the horses that I ride are the ones that are almost ready to be turned loose with the clients. But we're that's how it works.
Hmm.
Every once in a while I'll get a break where I get to ride Elvis, who you know and love. So, but
Elvis
he's
is my
kind of
buddy.
yeah, he's kind of my go-to when I'm ready to just not think about it. I get to ride Elvis. So,
I don't think you have to have any experience at all from my perspective. After jumping on top of Elvis, or even I think I've ridden Maverick before.
mhm,
Um, but either way, you don't really have to be a horseback rider to feel comfortable. After like 5 minutes, you're good to
exactly.
go.
Yeah.
And the cool thing too is so you're watching the dogs, but like you said, I'm pretty sure those horses are doing the same thing. So when the dogs go on point, I could give the command, I could tell the horse to pick up speed, but I don't
hmm
have to because
You don't
the
have to.
second the
Yeah.
dogs go on point, the horses, they're just like they start
They're
moving
absolutely.
faster
Yep.
pace, faster pace, and you
Their
get right
ears
up
perk
there.
forward. Yeah. Their ears go forward, and they step into that 4 beat gait, and away you go. Yeah. They're they know their jobs.
A lot of people that I've told this story to, like, so do you just shoot from the top of the horse? And I said, no, no, your gun is right on the side, and you hop off the horse, you grab the gun, the dogs are on point, you walk up. It's that same anticipation of a flush when you're walking up behind it.
hmm
And then the horses literally you look back and they're like, hey, you're going to get this one. Like
Yeah.
they're
Right.
watching you.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're watching. They're taking the opportunity to grab a bite of grass, and they're keeping an eye on everyone. That's for sure.
Yeah. Um, when does your hunting season begin?
The grouse season starts the third weekend of September every year. So,
How late into the season are you comfortable taking your horses out there on the prairie?
well, a lot of it depends on the weather, and the downside of it is you never know what the weather is going to do. We don't we if we push it up to Thanksgiving, that's we're kind of rolling the dice after that. And there's sometimes in that stretch in November we end up with some weather that we just there's no way we could possibly get out and go hunting.
Is that just because it's uncomfortable or because the drifts get too high that you have to worry about?
Yeah, because it really, if we end up with a bunch of snow and the snow drifts are there, it's those birds aren't going to be around anyway. So you're basically going for a really cold trail ride, and we have done it, and we've actually found some birds, but they change their patterns, they change where they're eating. All their food's covered up with snow, so it's a different world when you're out in the cold and the rain and sleet and snow and all of that. So.
Right. We hunted together probably, it wasn't October, but it was, I think, maybe the last week of September. And the last week of September in South Dakota is just, or I suppose it can be just absolutely beautiful. I mean, I think we were talking highs in the 60s, Jeff, maybe 65.
Yeah.
And for my wife to be out there, I'm comfortable in a t-shirt in that, but my wife is, it can be 85 and sunny, and all of a sudden a cloud goes over and she puts on a sweater, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So for her, to be out there on the prairie, November for her, she may not have had the same experience that she had in, just a light jacket riding out
Right.
there. So really that, being able to hunt grouse earlier than pheasants, it adds again another reason why bringing somebody like your wife along with on that
Hmm.
hunt is just ideal. Is there a
Yeah.
best time of the year for people to come out? I think I already know the answer to this, but I'll ask you, is there the best time of the year to hunt those prey birds?
Well, and the earlier in the season, the better. And then, of course, your weather is always a factor. But if you get into November, you're going to end up with some really, really odds that you're going to run into a snowstorm or colder weather. So, late September, early October on in, really all the way up to the end of October is usually pretty ideal stuff. But that's always up in the air. We've gone out hunting in mid to late October, and it's been nine below. So, and we've gone out same time with the snow coming down so hard that you could hardly see. So,
Oh, I bet I like that kind of stuff personally.
mhm.
If it's miserable, if it's challenging, they're always the most memorable hunts. I love when things don't go as planned like that. Um, I was gonna say, so you are mainly chasing sharp-tailed grouse and prairie chickens, right?
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you guys ever go after pheasants, or do you just not care? Do people not want to pheasant hunt with you?
It's well, I do have groups that come out that they like to do sharp-tailed prairie chicken in the morning, have lunch, and then find a spot to hunt pheasants. And of course, as you know, the thing about pheasants is they're not in the same place as the sharp-tailed and prairie chicken for the most part.
For the
There's an
most part, yep.
overlap, yeah. But hunting pheasant is different. So there's a couple of places that we lease that have the shelter belts and some crop land next to it that have potential for pheasants. And so those guys that come out and want to do that, we do have it available, but that's not the big push for me because you spend less time on your horse when you do that.
Right. They basically have to be walking at all times with the gun ready then, right?
That's kind of how it works. Yeah. That's, because, and those pheasants, granted, the sharp tails and the prairie chickens, they'll wander away from you if you wait long enough, but with those pheasants,
Hmm.
they're gone. By the time you get off a horse and get up to where the dogs are on point, those pheasants are 30 yards away from you from where they were.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
we've walked across an entire pasture before with the dogs pointing, relocating, all the way across the pasture. Get to the end of the pasture, guys are panting because they've been trying to catch up to a pheasant, and there's no
Right.
blockers. I take four people out at a time, so it's not like we can put three guys at the end here and then go drive around and then push that field or anything like that. So the pheasants just happily fly away. So
Right. Run away, then fly.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
You, you mentioned you take four people out. When we went, there was two of us, and then you and Teresa. And to me, that was probably an ideal number. I could see adding, yeah, like you said, up to two more people. Is four your max?
Yeah, yeah, four hunters and then myself. So that's
Gotcha.
that's a manageable number. So
So last year when we hunted together, late September, which was early season still, numbers were insane. I remember telling my wife more than once, like, honey, I know this is your first time hunting, but you may never experience prairie grouse like this ever again because there were so many birds. Did you keep track of how many birds we saw each day? It felt like we probably flushed a couple hundred,
Easily. Yeah.
maybe.
It was
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
I couldn't believe it. Somebody was smiling down on us that day for her first hunt. That's all there was to it. Everything was perfect. It all came together like that, and it was. I honestly I couldn't believe it. I just couldn't.
Yeah.
I knew there
Well,
was a
I
lot
feel
of birds,
like,
but
and it's interesting too because it gave her a lot of chances,
mhm,
which that's a big thing because the first one gets up and it's flying a little low. The dog, is near and
yep,
she doesn't want to shoot, and anytime that scenario happened, she didn't pull the trigger. And I kept saying,
right,
honey, I'm proud of you. You did the right thing. If you're not comfortable, never take that shot. And
right.
then, she did get her first bird. Spoiler alert if you haven't watched the show yet, sorry, but she did get her first bird. Um, I'm super pumped about that. We cooked them up when we got home. We enjoyed that to the fullest. But just the amount of opportunities, the amount of birds we saw, was it like that the rest of the season, or did we just have the most magical day in your life?
I'll tell you what, it was. It really was, and but the hard part about this horseback thing is that, and even people that have experience hunting quail or birds down south and whatnot, is that
Hmm.
these birds, they're like nothing else. You have to be quick. You have to get off your horse and you have to get up there. It's not a slow walk or any of that. You just go, because if you don't, those birds are going to be gone before you get an opportunity. But we have last season was great all season long, and the last hunt that we did was mid-November last year, and we had more than one occasion, but one that sticks in my mind. We crested a hill, and I heard the collar beep that one dog was on point, and he was probably 200 yards from us uphill. We crested the hill, and the other dog came in and eased into a point. It was Bandit, and my hunter got off the horse and he started walking up there. And I was watching Bandit, and he was just shaking. He was just intense. And I thought, what the heck is going on? And all of a sudden, at least 50 grouse flushed all around him. It looked like a tornado
Oh,
went straight up around him. And we just, the guy that was hunting with me has been coming out for several years now, and he shot a bird, and he just stopped and he turned around at me, and he had a grin on his face. That was just, neither one of us could believe the bird numbers. And then right across the hillside, another 50 birds got up. It was just, we had gotten some cold weather, and the birds had covied up, and they were all sitting on those hillsides sunning themselves, and so the number of birds was unbelievable, and it was so intense to see all those birds go at once.
oh man, I can picture myself there. I just have those views ingrained into my mind, and most of them get
Yeah.
away, but that's the beauty of the hunt. So it's a hunt that's, if you're a diehard hunter, there's is still a challenging hunt. So it's still
Hmm.
something that it's this is you're hunting 100% wild birds out there. So there's no, there's no gimmies in this kind of a hunt. But yet
That's right.
it's also ideal for that first time hunter too, to experience something together. If it's your wife or a girlfriend, or even any first time hunter, to go out and experience it, your kids. I don't know. I've just, like, I put it up there as one of the most rewarding bird hunts that I've ever been on.
Well, I appreciate
And
that.
so that's why I just recommend it so highly for people to try it, even just one time, if it's only once. But like you said, you've got customers that obviously come back year in and
Mhm.
year out because they just can't get enough of it. But well, Jeff, I thoroughly enjoyed the experience. I know you haven't seen the show yet, so I'm eager for you to watch it and then give me your feedback on it. I hope that anyone else listening now does the same. Jeff, you can be reached at tinkerkennels.com. I know your
Cool.
contact information is all on there. How are you feeling about this coming hunting season?
It's I really think it's going to be a great year. We didn't get the crazy rain like we did last year, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It'll be nice to be able to get out in the field and not have to worry about getting stuck. So there's plenty of moisture, and there's definitely plenty of birds. Like I said, before the carryover from last year, we didn't even touch the population, and this spring was an easy spring for the birds. So there's another hatch coming out too.
Dang, dang. Well, bless you, my friend. I hope you have a wonderful season in the field. Thank you for letting me share the time on horseback on the prairie with you. I'll never forget it. My wife will never forget it. And I hope someday we can do it again. And maybe when my
Absolutely.
kids are a little bit older, they can
There you go.
experience it too.
You
Yeah.
bet. You guys are always welcome.
Thanks, my friend. You have a wonderful day. We'll catch
You
you
too.
all next time on the next episode of the Flush Podcast. We are going to be journeying all the way up to Alaska. You're not going to want to miss it.